This episode of the Pain Education Corner is sponsored by the Comella Foundation. The Comella Foundation is committed to relieving pain naturally using osteopathic healing principles. Here at the Comella Foundation, we envision a world where people achieve their maximum potential by being empowered with knowledge and skills to heal themselves and others. This information is to be used for educational purposes only and not to be construed as medical advice. If you have any questions or concerns, please consult a licensed healthcare professional. Okay, hello, it's Bill, the Knee Pain Guru, and welcome to the Pain Education Podcast, brought to you by the Comella Foundation. Today we have, his name is Rand, and we're going to talk today about pain relieving benefits of CBD oil for joint pain. So welcome, Rand.
Thanks for having me on, Bill.
Absolutely. Rand, could you share with me your background, like how we got to this point?
Yeah, sure. I kind of grew up in the suburbs of Chicago and, never really grew anything or had any interest in growing anything until I was like in my mid-20s. And then, kind of started to see that would be something important to learn. So, basically just dove right in. My partner Alexander and I traveled around the country working on different farms and trying to see where we might want to live one day. And that eventually led us to Marshall, North Carolina, where we started our farm 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And we are a diversified vegetable farm. And then in 2019, we incorporated hemp into our rotation.
Excellent. And when you and your partner were traveling the country, helping on different farms, were you studying growing hemp, or was it just farming in general? Kind of give a little bit of that. How did that work for you guys?
Yeah, so at the time, we had a little bit experience in the cannabis industry, working up in Humboldt County, California. Cannabis is a plant I've had a relationship with for almost 20 years now. Growing up, I had a lot of mental health issues. And when I got to high school, I kind of realized that cannabis really helped me. And so we didn't know anything about CBD though, and hemp really wasn't a thing. I was learning how to grow cannabis. It just wasn't necessarily hemp. Fast forward to 2019, and the 2018 is when the Farm Bill was passed, and it made it legal for farmers in all 50 states to grow hemp. And we can kind of talk about what makes it hemp and whatnot, but up until that point, I really wasn't interested, because I thought to grow hemp for industrial purposes meant you had to have hundreds of acres and you're growing basically for like fiber or rope, and that didn't really interest me too much.
Mm-hmm. So you're throwing out different topics there, and I want, because I grew up with drugs are bad, kids. This is your brain. This is your brain on drugs. The whole kind of thing. So I'd like you to make a distinction between cannabis and hemp and CBD. Some of the terms that people hear going around, so they begin to understand, because I think there's a good portion of the population out there that may not understand the difference between those terms.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a little confusing because there's a lot of terms, and this is all really new. But basically, cannabis sativa is the plant itself, and then from that you have cannabis sativa that's high in delta-9 THC, which is, typically what's considered marijuana, or, that's the illegal cannabinoid, the one that, has psychoactive effects. Hemp is considered anything that has a delta-9 THC level of 0.03 or less. And so basically, for something to be considered industrial hemp, it's going to have a total THC or a delta-9 THC level of 0.3% THC or less, meaning it's not going to be psychoactive. And so, and then typically for, so it's confusing for people that think that because if somebody came to our farm and saw our plants, they're typically not what people expect hemp to look like, because it looks just like the Delta 9 plants. They grow the same, they smell the same, the buds look the same, and it's very different than, say, a hemp plant for industrial purposes like fiber, which is going to grow more like bamboo. It's going to be about 15 feet tall, and you're not really going to be going for buds. You're more going for like big stalks. And so really though, it's just breeding. And so what they've done is they've taken the, Delta 9 THC plants and basically bred out the Delta 9 THC, or gotten it so low that it doesn't have any psychoactive effects, while at the same time breeding for high CBD content.
Mm-hmm. Okay. If I could repeat that back to you, you have this cannabis plant, and one would be considered, the legal one is going to have a very low THC amount, psychoactive effect on it, and the other one is going to have a high THC, and that is what people would normally associate with getting high, those different types of it. So these are specifically bred types of plants that have a low amount of THC. And would they have a higher percentage of CBD?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they've definitely bred for low Delta 9 THC, high CBD.
Okay. Now we have these letters. We have THC, CBD. We understand that the THC is what gives the psychoactive effects. Can you share about what the benefits or the effects CBD would have on the human body?
Yeah, so CBD has been shown to be really good for things like inflammation, and also it's very effective at treating anxiety, insomnia, and things like depression and so forth. It's kind of been casted as this cure-all, which I think turns a lot of people off, because they think, like, how could it be good for all of these things? It sounds too much like snake oil, right?
Right.
But when you actually start to look into the science of what it does, and you start to study the endocannabinoid system, it all kind of comes together, and you can see why it's good for everything from MS to anxiety to insomnia, and so forth. So your endocannabinoid system is something that we should probably touch on a little bit, if we have a moment.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Please. This is about you sharing your knowledge. So I'd love to hear, because that's something, the term I've heard before, couldn't tell you anything about it though.
Sure. So a good way to think about your endocannabinoid system is, endo meaning it's within you. It's where we produce cannabinoids naturally. Our body produces cannabinoids naturally. This is not a synthetic chemical from the outside. Our bodies are already doing this. So your endocannabinoid system is basically responsible for the regulation of all of your systems. So think of it as a complex network of neurological pathways that help to regulate your internal and external systems, everything from your digestive system to your circulatory system, to your immune system. And so when all of those systems are in a state of homeostasis, a state of balance, ideally the individual is healthy. And so that's why it can help with a bunch of different ailments, because it kind of encompasses your whole body.
Mm-hmm. So the endocannabinoid system, but how tie it in with the function of CBD oil in with that?
So when you are going to take something like CBD, like cannabinoids like CBD, or there's over 100 cannabinoids. CBD is one of the big ones right now, and what they're finding is it helps to kind of boost your endocannabinoid system. So over time, our endocannabinoid system might not be working as effectively. And so what CBD tends to do is kind of give that a boost and help that sort of achieve a level of basically a level of balance to where it can do its job correctly.
Now, help me understand in terms of the CBD contains endocannabinoids. Our bodies contain endocannabinoids. When we take CBD, in the case of for joint pain, how is this functioning, or how is this helping? Kind of connect the dots for me there, because I'm not quite understanding yet.
Yeah. So our body contains endocannabinoids, and the CBD oil or CBD product is going to have cannabinoids. And so the theory is basically by taking that, you're boosting your endocannabinoid system to help with things such as inflammation and other various chronic pain ailments. So go ahead.
Well, yeah, is this helping our nervous system regulate itself to be able to address whatever we might be dealing with from a pain perspective? Is that
right? Because yeah, in a lot of senses, I mean, pain is really a response of, well, there's many different types of pain, but say something like MS that deals with neurological pain. That's basically the receptors talking to each other and communicating that something is off there. And sometimes these receptors are a little bit overactive, in which case, the slightest sensations can cause people significant pain. Well, this is a disorder. This is a system that is not in order. And so by boosting your endocannabinoid system to kind of regulate that pain function, it can help to relieve those symptoms, and actually, and not just be a Band-Aid, like a pain pill that's just going to kind of numb the pain. It's actually working to fix the underlying problem.
Addressing it neurologically in the body, giving the nervous system more of the flexibility it needs to reorder itself in a way to address the challenge that it's experiencing.
Yes.
Okay, cool. That makes sense. When I'm assuming you've had an extensive relationship with the cannabis plant for 20 years. Can you tell me your experience with the different ways of consuming CBD and how it was able to help you?
Yeah. So there's various ways to consume CBD. You can take it through, you could take an oil. You could consume it through edibles like gummies or chocolates. You can smoke the flower itself, or vape concentrates of it, which would give you a more immediate effect. You can also use it as a salve, which is really good for kind of putting it on a certain area that is painful. It's gonna absorb through your dermal layer into your muscles, and to me, I think that's probably the most effective way to treat pain is really with a salve.
Are there advantages? And I'm thinking of if we were to take a supplement, taking a supplement which is isolating a vitamin or a mineral is much different. You there, Rand?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Taking a supplement is going to be very different than if we were to take a whole food that has that quality in it. Is there advantages, disadvantages, being that we're isolating CBD in a way that is going to be different than if the CBD is in relationship with THC? I'm trying to understand that. Is there something lost in taking CBD without the relationship of THC with it?
Yeah, well, THC definitely has many medicinal properties, and personally, I find it to be most effective when you're able to combine the two. For legal reasons, we are very limited in that regard. We can have, our products are full spectrum, meaning that they have a variety of different cannabinoids and terpenes that work together to offer therapeutic effects. And so something like, our products will have less than 0.3% THC, but it's still in there. And it's definitely more effective, I have found, than just what's called CBD isolate, which is where they really do just isolate the CBD, the cannabinoid of CBD, and that's all you're getting. No THC, no other minor cannabinoids, and no terpenes. And so, yeah, there's definitely a therapeutic effect to combining the two. But a lot of people don't want the psychoactive effects that THC sometimes brings to the table.
You brought up a couple of terms we hadn't heard as of yet. You said minor cannabinoids and terpenes. Can you explain those a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. So there are over 100 cannabinoids, and we're still learning. I mean, we're just really scratching the surface here on what these things can do. But the main ones that they've studied so far, obviously delta-9 THC is the most well-known cannabinoid. They're now doing research into delta-8, which is very similar to delta-9, but it doesn't quite have the same edge to it, but it still has a lot of the same uplifting properties. You've got CBG, which has been shown to actually be good for pain receptors and kind of targeting more of your CB2 receptors that have more to do with pain. You've got CBD, you've got CBC, and the list kind of goes on. And like I said, this is very new. They're just starting to dig in. Unfortunately, there's not as much, human studies, I guess, as I would like in terms of scientific double-blind placebo studies, really diving into this. There's some promising animal studies, but to be quite honest, a lot of the evidence we have for CBD working is anecdotal and testimonial. And I don't know if that's just kind of a lack of will on the industry, because there's not the willpower for pharmaceutical companies to really fund this. And most of the studies are funded by pharmaceutical companies. So that might be why they're kind of lacking in this. But the amount of testimonies and anecdotal data is significant. And that's why these products have caught on, because they really do work. I mean, I can testify it, and I've got testimonials up on our website from people who have tried a variety of different things, and they say this works for them. This works better than anything for them.
And these are a wide array of product. I know you sell the oil. That's something that I got from you at the market a few weeks ago. And you also have the plant itself that people can smoke if they wanted. There's also you have the salve. I'm not recalling. Is that something?
Yeah, we do a salve too. It's a 750 milligram salve, which is stronger than most the salves out there. And the reason for that is I just wanted something that really worked. One day so I'm a farmer, and I do a lot of repetitive motions, and it's a long season, and your body gets beat up. And every single year I would hurt my neck to the point where I couldn't turn left or right and just basically be out of commission. And the only way I was able to get back was to go see a chiropractor or do some deep massage physical therapy and go back that way. Well, it happened, I think it was about a year ago. And I just wanted to make up something, I was kind of experimenting with different strengths to see what would work best. And I just made something super strong because I wanted it to work. And I lathered it on there. It's basically just CBD oil and beeswax with a little bit of vitamin E as a preservative. And I slept with a hot water bottle, and I could feel it just kind of getting into my skin and absorbing into the muscles. And I just kind of slept like that night. I woke up the next day, it was 90% better. I mean, I could go left. I mean, it was amazing. And that's when I was like, okay, this needs to be strong, because people need to feel it and it needs to work. Otherwise, what are we doing? So we do offer a 750 milligram salve. We're going to be bringing on a 1500 milligram salve for people that have very intense pain. And then we also do concentrates, and we do some edible products as well.
Now, the concentrates are the oils. Is that what you were referring to in the small dropper bottles?
Well, those would be more like extracts.
Okay.
It is concentrated in the sense. And when we make those oils, what we're doing is I'm bringing my processor flower that has been bucked down, so it's just the buds. and then they're doing a subcritical CO2 extraction to pull all the cannabinoids and the terpenes into an oil, which in a sense does concentrate it, and then allows it to be, readily available for your body.
Yeah, I'm the way you're presenting the information, like you really got this down, and I appreciate that. And I want to make sure we get it to land for the person who's like, what is this stuff? How does this all work? So is there something other than the salve, the buds to smoke, and the oil / extract? Is there something else, another form that you're referring to?
Yeah, so that's what I would refer to as concentrates. And
Okay.
so that's a similar process to the oil, but you're basically doing a process that's going to concentrate it into a small form. And that's what you would see people that might do vape pens or dabbing.
Okay.
It's a fairly niche thing, but the idea behind it is that you could only take a few hits off of a dab pen and you get immediate relief versus having to smoke a whole joint or something like that. So it's also the reason people would maybe choose that method is because it's the fastest. It's immediate. You feel the effects immediately. And it does help with pain. I mean, I had the flu a few years back, and this was before we were even growing hemp, and somebody gave me a CBD vape cart. And I mean, it was amazing, but I was keeled over for like days, and it just immediately took all of the stomach pain away. And I mean, it was like, yeah. So, and that's kind of when I became a believer, and I had this sort of epiphany lying there, like, oh, the pharmaceutical industry has no idea what they're in for, because this stuff works. Like, this isn't just hype. I kind of didn't think about it much until trying it, and then actually really feeling the effects that I saw, like how big this whole thing is going to be.
Got it. And where are we across the United States? You probably have a finger on the pulse a little bit more of where hemp farming is legal. And you said it's all the way across the United States. It's legal at this point.
It's legal in all 50 states. Every state has various laws regarding the THC contents. Like some states, like Oregon, will test their hemp farmers for total THC. In North Carolina, they're testing us for only Delta 9 THC. So there's some minor nuance like that, which most people don't really need to know about. But it is legal in all 50 states, and it is legal to ship to all 50 states. And each state has their own program for people to grow it. So that's where it differs a little bit. Like in North Carolina, to grow hemp, you have to be an actual farm, and then you have to go through a permit process. And it's not actually not too bad, but every state kind of has their own industrial hemp program.
Yeah, I was at a Christmas party last year, and I ran into one of the women who works for the North Carolina government that did the testing locally. And she was saying how you essentially have to grow your entire crop, and then they test to see if the THC level is below the threshold of whatever it is. And if it goes above the threshold, they have to burn the entire field. And I was like, oh, how crushing could that be, to go through an entire season and grow everything and make sure everything is right, only to find out that the THC level is too high and it needs to be wiped out.
That's, it's pretty devastating to the farmer, right? No, it's, and that could be off by, if it's just over, they don't care. It's really, and the thing is, it's really an arbitrary number. There's no actual reason why it needs, like if it was 1% THC, you're not really going to feel it. It's still such a low amount that, so it's a little bit frustrating having to play within these arbitrary thresholds, especially because 1% THC would be, I believe, more beneficial for more people. If you could do like maybe like a 20-to-1 CBD to THC ratio, that would be nice. And I think we're moving in that direction. At the same time, however, the genetics have come a long way in the last few years. And so if you are growing good genetics, you should be well under that legal limit. So that's, I spend a lot of money on seed to really try to get the best genetics, because that's something I don't want to deal with. It would just be pretty devastating to lose an entire hemp crop.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense, that the genetics keep improving with the science and the technology behind all of it. Let's see. When I'm looking for someone who's suffering with pain, like they're looking for something to relieve the pain, cut down the pain, something like that. Is a higher concentrate always better? I guess I want to manage expectations between your experience and some, the listeners to the podcast, as to what they would want to shoot for. Would they like a lower salve be better for them to start out with, to try it out? Would a higher concentrate? Kind of walk us through that.
Sure. So what I would recommend to people who are dealing with pain is you can kind of hit it on two fronts. You can go take the oil, which is really good. You would basically take it sublingually. So put it under your tongue for 30 to 60 seconds and kind of let it sit there, and it'll absorb under your tongue, and less will be filtered out by your liver that way. And then you can swig it down with a glass of water. What that's going to do is it's going to kind of help your entire body. It's going to help the inflammation process. It's going to help balance your endocannabinoid system of your whole body. So you could do that. And then you could also hit certain areas with the salve to kind of double up on it. And that's what I would recommend for people. Now, in terms of dosage, you can't really overdo it with the salve. You can put as much on there as you want, and you're really not going to feel any adverse effects. Maybe trial it in one spot just to make sure you don't have a weird skin reaction, but it's actually, a lot of people will use CBD salve for skin ailments. So like I said, it works on many levels. I have people that use it for eczema and things like that. And it's amazing how fast it'll clear it up. So with the oil though, I always recommend people start with, start small and kind of work your way up. That's typically the best way to go about it. So I would recommend people start with our 1500 milligram and just take maybe half a dropper. Now we also have a 750 milligram, and the only difference is it's titrated down more. So it has a lower price point. So people who are just kind of, experimenting with CBD can try it without having to commit to a full bottle of 1500. But it's everybody's pain level is going to be different. Everybody's body is different on how they, basically metabolize cannabinoids. So what might be a strong dose for somebody might not really be a strong, I'll take 3 full droppers and be fine. My partner, Alexandra, might take half a dropper and feel the same amount. So everybody's kind of got a different threshold here. To give another story, people will use it for pets as well. And I was giving it to my dog for arthritis. We have a 250 milligram, which is for dogs or for pets, because, they have much lower body weights and it doesn't take much. And I would give him maybe half a dropper of the 250 to help with our arthritis. He was about 8 years old. He started experiencing arthritis and it was pretty bad. And I started giving him CBD oil. And after a month, he significantly improved. And he wasn't limping anymore. And a whole nother year out, basically from going to limp to no limp for a whole nother year. Unfortunately, a year goes by, a little over a year goes by, and he hurt his back really bad. And I'm not exactly sure how. It might have been a slip disc. It could have been more of a degenerative disease. We got 5 different vets, gave us 5 different opinions, and it was frustrating to not exactly know what was going on. But when he was going through the throes of pain, he was in such bad pain, he was shaking. He was And I was just, I didn't know what to do. The vet told me he needs a fentanyl patch. And people that don't know, fentanyl is a very, very strong opiate. I'm sure your listeners are somewhat familiar with the
Mhm.
idea. It's a very strong opioid. And I would have had to take him to a clinic and they would have had to sew a patch onto his skin. And I just didn't want
Oh,
to do that.
sure.
So that's where I was at. And I was desperate. And I was like giving him the pet one. I was giving him more and more, and it just didn't seem to be doing anything. So I started giving him the 1500 milligram. And that's when I really noticed a difference. So went from maybe giving him 10 milligrams of CBD a day to 150 to 200 milligrams of CBD a day. And when I got to that threshold, I noticed within, a few minutes, it was his pain, he stopped shaking, and he was actually able to sleep, and the pain was drastically reduced. And it
Mhm.
also helped with inflammation. And so I've seen it work in real time, and it's a little bit frustrating that the studies aren't there to really back this up. But I mean, I've seen it work time and time again.
Mhm. About the work we do at the Comella Foundation, please visit our website at the Comella, COMELLA foundation.org. Okay, awesome. So, touching on someone who's first starting to work with CBD, they'd want to pick a strategy and incrementally increase what they're taking to until they feel an effect for the goal that they're shooting for, be it knee pain or back pain, neck pain. Um, that's what I hear you kind of shooting for, or a strategy for someone who would begin working with CBD oil or a CBD product.
Mhm. Yeah, I like to tell people to start small and work their way up, because there is still some THC in there. If you take a high enough amount, you might start to feel some psychoactive effects, especially if you're very sensitive and you've never really done, THC before. So I just say, start with typically half a dropper, and you can always take more. The other thing to keep in mind is it sometimes takes a little while to build up in your system. I've had people tell me they tried it, and the first few times they didn't really feel anything, but they kept doing it. And
Mm,
then a few weeks down the line, they actually found relief and their symptoms went away. And so, what that's doing is it's helping regulate and balance your endocannabinoid system.
mhm,
So that's typically what I recommend to people is just start small and then kind of work your way up and see how your body reacts with it. And,
mhm,
of course, check with your healthcare provider first, there's a million medications out there, and you just want to make sure that they're not going to have any, um, you know, bad effects when mixed with CBD. But for the most part, it's a pretty safe and mild alternative to pain management.
mhm. Now, I'd also imagine not all CBD products are created equal. You were saying you had different concentrations of it and different manufacturers. Like, you grow the product that you actually make into the concentrate that you sell. And different farmers have different farming practices. There's different extraction practices. I imagine it is the industry regulated, or how does that work?
Yeah, no, it's not all created equal. And I just even just using different processors, we've experimented with different processors, and I found that the current processors that we use, it's just a more potent product, especially when what we're using is flour. We're
Mm,
not using like the stalks and the leaves. Some CBD oil manufacturers will be going through with combine harvesters and just shredding the plant, and that's the material. And you can do that and you can get CBD oil out of it, but it's not going to be as potent as the flour. The flour has the most, it's going to be loaded with terpenes and cannabinoids. Terpenes are sort of the it's basically what you what you're smelling when you smell cannabis, or what you're tasting. And we're finding that the terpenes and the cannabinoids kind of play off one another, and provide therapeutic effects. So really, you want to find somebody that's growing organically. You want to find somebody that's making their CBD oil from whole flower and not just the fan leaves and stuff, so that it's extra potent. I believe that subcritical CO2 is the most effective extraction process, because it doesn't involve heating up the oil, which when you do that, you're going to lose a lot of those monoterpenes and some of the more volatile cannabinoids. So it does a better job of actually preserving the essence of the plant, preserving those medicinal compounds. And yeah, I mean, I'd say that's the big thing, is just making sure you're getting a high quality product. You know, it's really not all created equally. So you really want to do your research, find a good source, and just you know, unfortunately, when there really isn't much oversight, to be honest, to answer that question, there really isn't. It's still so new, and I mean, personally, I think a lot of people are getting ripped off. I see what some people are selling it for, and I don't, there's no reason for them to be selling it for that much. And a lot of times it ends up being a lower quality product, and they spend all their money on advertising. And so it really pays to find a good source. You know, when you buy from us, you're getting it right from the source. So we don't have to mark it up, because we're not a middleman. You're literally, you know, we pay our processors, but you're literally buying it from the farm. Yeah, I mean, just read reviews. Like, you know, I think like the reviews go a long way. And when somebody takes the time to write, you know, a paragraph or two telling how it helped them, that's a real person. That's a real story. And that goes a long way. So we really encourage all of our, you know, all of our customers to leave reviews. We kind of just started that, but it's been going well. And the things people have been saying have really blowing me away. It feels good to see that people are being helped by this plant.
Okay. I wasn't expecting to ask you any of these questions, but this is awesome. I like the direction that we're going. Yeah. So and this has happened with other guests, where it's like, all of a sudden it's like, well, how would you know? How would you vet somebody in an industry that isn't regulated? Like there was a month or so ago, we interviewed a physical therapist, and I was like, well, not all physical therapists are created equal. How do you know when you sign up for an appointment if you're going to get a good physical therapist or not? Someone that cares, like the person that I was interviewing. And we got a great list from the physical therapist as to how you would call up a physical therapist out of the blue to determine whether you would want to go see him or not, make an appointment or not. So I'm going to dig a little deeper. I've been making some notes here since you started talking about it, of like, what is a checklist? A person, maybe they don't want to order it and have it shipped. Maybe there's a local hemp farmer or somebody who's producing CBD locally, but they would know if that person is what you're saying, has a superior product, or their farming practices or things like that. So I want to go down a list of how someone could ask. And this is the notes that I've taken so far. One is that they farm organically, that they are extracting the CBD from the flowers specifically, not the leaves and the stalks, that they do a subcritical CO2 extraction on those flowers, that they're buying it from the source. Like the farm that they're buying it from is actually the person that the farm that's growing the product is actually who they're buying it from. So they're cutting out the middlemen. They're buying it straight from the source. And then check out reviews of the product. Is there anything else you could think of in that process that a person who would be starting from ground zero? I don't know squat about CBD. I don't know who grows it locally or anything like that. And I start going to farmers markets, and now I'm interacting with some of the farmers that are growing this. Are there any other questions that I would want to ask?
I would ask them how they're growing. I think that's, if you can actually talk to the farm, ask them how they're growing. Ask them do they test their soil for heavy metals, and do they test their oil for residual solvents? You can ask, are they using whole flower? Are they just using the whole plant? Are they using and I would really ask them about their growing practices. The thing is, you really want to know your farmer. And this isn't just for CBD, this is for food, okay? I mean, just because something says organic on it, there's a lot of organic pesticides that you can use. Now, I don't spray my buds. I just don't. That's not just a sacrilege. So, but, other people might not really care. And unfortunately, because the hemp plant is a bioaccumulator, meaning it is going to take everything in the soil. It's going to actually clean the soil. It's an amazing plant. It'll clean the soil and it'll hold that in its biomass. So the thing with that is, though, if it's growing in toxic soil, it's going to take in those toxins. So you want to make sure you're growing in clean soil that hasn't been polluted, by I don't know, lead or other heavy metals, or, all the nasty pesticides out there, because it will take those up. So, I think if you can really just talk to the farmer and ask, how are you growing, or your soil's clean, do you use any pesticides? I think that would go a long way in sort of further vetting the farm itself. And then you can ask them more about, how they process it, and who they use for that. And then you ask them about testing, and ask what kind of testing they do. Because all those are very, very important questions.
Yeah. I mean, these are great questions, because I wouldn't even have thought to ask these. And I would consider myself pretty astute as far as asking questions to learn about who I'm dealing with. But these are great topics. Knowing your farmer, are they testing the soil? Do they use pesticide? That's all great stuff. I'm running out of questions to ask you. Can you share a little bit about the bonus you guys are going to put together for the listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had a coupon code just for the listeners of this show. The code is Pain Relief 15, and you can put that in the show notes. And people will just, when they go to akirabotanicals.com, you put whatever you want in your cart, and then at checkout, it'll have a spot to enter your coupon code, and then it'll take 15% off your order total. And so that's going to bring down stuff to make it pretty affordable. This also applies to all bulk packs. So we're one of the few farms out there, or one of the few CBD companies that actually does bulk discounting, kind of like Costco or whatever. If somebody's willing to buy, 6 bottles of CBD oil from me, I don't see why they shouldn't get wholesale pricing. And so that's basically what we're trying to do, is like consumers have access to this stuff at wholesale pricing. And with the discount code and the bulk packs, you actually get it for less than some of my wholesale vendors get it for. So the thing is, like, I'm a vegetable farmer. I'm used to low margins. And so like this to me is like, I don't see why it needs to be so expensive. A lot of it, I think, is just marketing, and people just have big marketing budgets that they need to accommodate for. But if people go to our website, they can use that. It applies to all products. Where our salve is probably one of our most popular. Same with the oil. And people can always reach out to me directly via email. And you can put my email in the show notes. It's rand@akirabotanicals.com. And people can shoot me any questions they have, and I'll be glad to get back to them.
And we had talked initially about an article, or like a PDF that people could download that's going to kind of go into some detail on different aspects of CBD use with chronic pain and things like that. We had a conversation around that. Is that still on the table? Where is that that we can offer to our listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are still working on the article, and hopefully it'll be out by the time this
Yeah,
podcast goes live.
sure, sure.
So, and that's just going to kind of be a summary of sort of CBD and pain management. And so it's going to
Okay.
cover a lot of stuff we talked about. It'll cover dosing. It'll cover different ways to use CBD for pain management and what some of the things it could help for. It'll also cite some of the studies that we didn't have time to go into. And like I said,
Sure.
there's a lot of promising animal studies. They haven't really done as many studies as I would like on humans. Like I said, this is still a very new thing. I mean, CBD kind of has only really caught on in the past few years. And so the science is still trying to catch up. And what we have is an abundance of anecdotal stories and testimonials. But the actual studies are still sort of to come. And I have 100% belief that these studies will come and they will show, demonstrative differences in people who take CBD and people who don't.
Absolutely. Rand, is there anything else that, like a loose end out there in today's thing, that you would like to cover that I didn't ask you about, or anything that's kind of sticking out in your mind?
Well, I just want to thank you for having me on. And I want to encourage people to reach out to me with any questions. I'm very accessible. I'm always down to talk about this kind of thing. Personally, I feel like I'm sort of called to be this plant's ambassador in a way. Like this, I'm not exaggerating when I say this plant has saved my life. And I really do believe that. And it's very much responsible for the person I am today and the way I see the world. And so I feel grateful that I'm able to grow this plant, and I'm very grateful that now this plant's gaining widespread acceptance. When I was starting to use it, I was very much demonized, and I was very much, it caused a lot of rifts within my family, and because it was a drug, right? And it was an illegal drug, and it had this bad connotation. It had this very stoner connotation. You're not going to achieve anything, sort of. And that's just kind of being wiped away. And CBD has kind of been the bridge to bring people to basically bring people to this plant, because you don't have to get high to enjoy the benefits, of CBD or of the cannabis plant. So, my 99-year-old grandma uses our oil. You know what I mean? So that's pretty
Sure.
cool that people, everyone from, kids, like little kids that suffer from seizures are using the oil. So it's got this wide range, and we're just scratching the surface of what this can do. We evolved alongside with this plant. That's why we have an endocannabinoid system. When you take a pain pill, you take something like a Vicodin, that's a synthetic chemical that your body now has to figure out how to integrate. So if you stop it, I've gone down the road of pharmaceuticals, and it's very hard to get off of them. And the reason is because it's synthetic chemicals, and your brain will stop producing certain chemicals as to kind of try to balance itself so it doesn't get flooded. And so with CBD or cannabis in general, it's just something you could do every day for 20 years and then not do it and be totally fine. Have no withdrawals, you can't even do that with coffee. You know what I mean? So it's really cool. And I believe that this plant holds the key to our evolution as a human species. And it's great to see that it's really helping people, because right now there's a lot of people hurting physically, mentally, spiritually. There's a lot of pain in the world. And I believe this plant might be the key to really helping us heal. And that's why I'm here. And like I said, I'm just grateful to grow this beautiful plant. If people want, they can follow us on Instagram at Akira Botanicals. They can see videos Akira Botanicals at YouTube. And like I said, reach out with any questions, or check out some blog articles on our website.
We'll include all of that information on how to reach out to you and contact you in the show notes of the podcast. Well, this will be on YouTube as well as on all the different podcast channels. So we'll get all that in there. Rand, I want to thank you so much for taking your time, sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. We really appreciate it. And anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up?
No, I think that's it. I just appreciate you having me on your show, and have your listeners reach out with any questions. I'd be glad to talk about this stuff.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Rand, for being here. Thank you all for that are watching the Pain Education Podcast brought to you by the Comella Foundation. This is Bill Paravano, the Knee Pain Guru. Thank you so much for being here. Have a wonderful day, and we will see you on the next one. About the work we do at the Comella Foundation, please visit our website at the Comella, COMELLA foundation.org. Join us next week for another conversation on natural healing methods to eliminate pain.